From today on, make the rest of your life the best of your life. Powerful sections in the FDCPA 15 USC 1692. As a public service, the staff of the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, has prepared the following complete text of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Please note that the format of the text differs in minor ways from the U.S. Code and West U.S. Code annotated. For example, this version uses FDCPA section numbers in the headings. In addition, the relevant U.S. Code citation is included with each section heading. Although the staff has made every effort to transcribe the statutory material accurately, this compendium is intended as a convenience for the public and not a substitute for the text in the U.S. Code. Short title. This subchapter may be cited as the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Congressional findings and declarations of purpose. Abusive practices. There is abundant evidence of the use of abusive, deceptive, and unfair debt collection practices by many debt collectors. Abusive debt collection practices contribute to the number of personal bankruptcies, marital instability, the loss of jobs, and invasions of individual privacy. Inadequacy of laws. Existing laws and procedures for redressing these injuries are inadequate to protect consumers. Available non-abusive collection methods. This means other than misrepresentation or other abusive debt collection practices are available for the effective collection of debts. Interstate commerce. Abusive debt collection practices are carried on to a substantial extent in interstate commerce and through means and instrumentalities of such commerce. Even where abusive debt collection practices are purely intrastate, they nevertheless directly affect interstate commerce. Purposes. It is the purpose of this subchapter to eliminate abusive debt collection practices by debt collectors, to ensure that those debt collectors who refrain from using abusive debt collection practices are not competitively disadvantaged, and to promote consistent state action to protect consumers against debt collection abuses. Definitions. As used in this subchapter. The term Bureau means the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection. The term communication means the conveying of information regarding a debt directly or indirectly to any person through any medium. The term consumer means any natural person obligated or allegedly obligated to pay any debt. The term creditor means any person who offers or extends credit creating a debt or to whom a debt is owed, but such term does not include any person to the extent that he receives an assignment or transfer of a debt in default solely to facilitate collection of such debt for another. The term debt means any obligation or alleged obligation of a consumer to pay money arising out of a transaction in which the money, property, insurance, or services that are the subject of the transaction are primarily for personal, family, or household purposes, whether or not such obligation has been reduced to judgment. The term debt collector means any person who uses any instrumentality of interstate commerce or the mail in any business, the principal purpose of which is the collection of any debts, or who regularly collects or attempts to collect, directly or indirectly, debts owed or due or asserted to be owed or due another. Notwithstanding the exclusion provided by clause of the last sentence of this paragraph, the term includes any creditor who, in the process of collecting his debts, uses any name other than his own, which would indicate that a third person is collecting or attempting to collect such debts. For Section 1692 of this title, such term also includes any person who uses any instrumentality of interstate commerce or the mail in any business, the principal purpose of which is the enforcement of security interests. The term does not include any officer or employee of a creditor while, in the name of the creditor, collecting debts for such creditor. Any person while acting as a debt collector for another person, both of whom are related by common ownership or affiliated by corporate control, if the person acting as a debt collector does so only for persons to whom it is so related or affiliated, and if the principal business of such person is not the collection of debts. Any officer or employee of the United States or any state to the extent that collecting or attempting to collect any debt is in the performance of his official duties. Any person while serving or attempting to serve legal process on any other person in connection with the judicial enforcement of any debt. Any nonprofit organization that, at the request of consumers, performs bona fide consumer credit counseling and assists consumers in the liquidation of their debts by receiving payments from such consumers and distributing such amounts to creditors. And any person collecting or attempting to collect any debt owed or due, or asserted to be owed or due another to the extent such activity is incidental to a bona fide fiduciary obligation or a bona fide escrow arrangement, concerns a debt which was originated by such person, concerns a debt which was not in default at the time it was obtained by such person, or concerns a debt obtained by such person as a secured party in a commercial credit transaction involving the creditor. The term location information means a consumer's place of abode and his telephone number at such place or his place of employment. The term state means any state, territory, or possession of the United States, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, or any political subdivision of any of the foregoing. Acquisition of location information. Any debt collector communicating with any person other than the consumer to acquire location information about the consumer shall identify himself, state that he is confirming or correcting location information concerning the consumer, and, only if expressly requested, identify his employer. Not state that such consumer owes any debt. Not communicate with any such person more than once unless requested to do so by such person, or unless the debt collector reasonably believes that the earlier response of such person is erroneous or incomplete, and that such person now has correct or complete location information. Not communicate by postcard. Not use any language or symbol on any envelope or in the contents of any communication effected by the mail or telegram that indicates that the debt collector is in the debt collection business, or that the communication relates to the collection of a debt, and after the debt collector knows the consumer is represented by an attorney about the subject debt and has knowledge of, or can readily ascertain, such attorney's name and address. Not communicate with any person other than that attorney, unless the attorney fails to respond within a reasonable period to communication from the debt collector. Communication in connection with debt collection. Communication with the consumer generally, without the prior consent of the consumer given directly to the debt collector or the express permission of a court of competent jurisdiction. A debt collector may not communicate with a consumer in connection with the collection of any debt, at any unusual time or a time or place known, or which should be known to be inconvenient to the consumer. In the absence of knowledge of circumstances to the contrary, a debt collector shall assume that the convenient time for communicating with a consumer is after 8 o'clock antemeridian and before 9 o'clock postmeridian, local time at the consumer's location. If the debt collector knows the consumer is represented by an attorney concerning such debt and has knowledge of or can readily ascertain such attorney's name and address, unless the attorney fails to respond within a reasonable period to a communication from the debt collector, or unless the attorney consents to direct communication with the consumer, or at the consumer's place of employment if the debt collector knows or has reason to know that the consumer's employer prohibits the consumer from receiving such communication. Communication with third parties, except as provided in Section 1692 bits of this title, without the prior consent of the consumer given directly to the debt collector, or the express permission of a court of competent jurisdiction, or as reasonably necessary to effectuate a post-judgment judicial remedy. A debt collector may not communicate, in connection with the collection of any debt, with any person other than the consumer, his attorney, a consumer reporting agency, if otherwise permitted by law, the creditor, the attorney of the creditor, or the attorney of the debt collector. Ceasing communication. If a consumer notifies a debt collector in writing that the consumer refuses to pay a debt, or that the consumer wishes the debt collector to cease further communication with the consumer, the debt collector shall not communicate further with the consumer concerning such debt except to advise the consumer that the debt collector's further efforts are being terminated, to notify the consumer that the debt collector or creditor may invoke specified remedies which are ordinarily invoked by such debt collector or creditor, or harassment or abuse. A debt collector may not engage in any conduct, the natural consequence of which is to harass, oppress, or abuse any person in connection with the collection of a debt, without limiting the general application of the foregoing. False or misleading representations. A debt collector may not use any false, deceptive, or misleading representation or means in connection with the collection of any debt. Without limiting the general application of the foregoing, the following conduct is a violation of this section. The false representation or implication that the debt collector is vouched for, bonded by, or affiliated with the United States or any state, including the use of any badge, uniform, or facsimile thereof. Leave questions in the comments below and we'll respond. Subscribe to our channel for more helpful videos like this. Thank you for watching, and until we meet again, stay healthy and happy. I'm giving you some news you can use.